never hurts to ask.
This is Channel 5, WLAC-TV, Nashville, Tennessee, Nashville's #1 television station.
There are approximately 11% of the precincts primarily from the Chicago area. Senator, one other matter. The presidential race in the state of Illinois is being rated a toss-up right now. It was not figured to be that way by the Republicans up until Election Day. What happened?
I don't figure it a toss-up even now.
Do you think it'll change around suddenly?
You tell me what you got from downstate.
Well, downstate returns, as you know, are fragmentary now.
Very, very fragmentary. And, of course, down there they deal mainly with paper ballots. It takes a longer time because that is a long, long ballot. I had occasion to look at it this morning when I voted. And so you just have to wait until they make their returns. And then you get some idea of the result.
Senator?
Yes, sir.
This is Roger Mudd in New York.
Yeah, Roger, how are you?
Well, what makes you so sure you're going to win? Why don't you believe our machine, Senator?
Where have I encountered that doubt on your part before?
Well, you don't see any chance at all that you could be whipped.
Why should I?
Well, I don't. Why shouldn't you?
I don't know of any reason why I should. You go around and fool the country with all these fragmentary returns of yours, and then they wake up with an entirely different conclusion.
Well, your feeling is that the downstate Illinois is going to put you back in office?
Oh, I thought I knew my country and my state pretty well. And I've been doing a little campaigning, Roger.
Okay, Senator. Good luck.
Have fun.
You know, Roger, it's interesting that Everett Dirksen is of the class of 1950 in the United States Senate. He himself ousted the Democratic leader on the floor, Scott Lucas, to take the seat. He now is the Republican minority leader in the Senate, as we all know, and a very colorful one. But in that same class of his, 1950, there are two other fellows who served 18 years, Wallace Bennett in Utah and Mike Monroney in Oklahoma. And both of those men, well, Monroney's having his troubles in Oklahoma. I don't think we've got any Utah returns yet, have we? We haven't got anything on the Bennett-Milton-Weilenman race in Utah. But the point is that in both those two races, I don't think Clark raised this against Dirksen in Illinois, but in both Utah and in Oklahoma, the charge was raised by their opponents that 18 years was long enough to serve in the Senate. And those were in quotes, because both Monroney and Bennett had run in 1950 saying 18 years is far too long in the Senate because their predecessors were they ousted have been 18 years in the Senate. So you got an interesting kind of a seniority run with the Dirksen-Bennett, Bennett-Monroney class of 50. CBS News color coverage of Election Night 68. We'll continue in a moment.
Sure beats smoking.
What beats smoking?
This cherry-flavored lozenge called Nicoban. Nicoban helps satisfy your tobacco hunger. Helps control your appetite, too.
Can Nicoban really help me break the cigarette habit?
You bet. For years, Nicoban has been recommended by doctors to help people cut down on smoking, and often without gaining weight. So if you want real help in breaking the cigarette habit, try Nicoban.
Nicoban sure beats smoking.
Honey, it's 3 in the morning.
I can't sleep.
When simple nervous tension keeps you awake, take Sominex as directed for 100% safe sleep.
Sominex contains 3 medical ingredients to bring on restful sleep.
Take Sominex tonight and sleep. Safe and restful sleep, sleep, sleep.
Take 2 Sominex tablets.
And sleep.
Now, also in capsules, hundreds of sleep-inducing granules.
In every Sominex capsule. Try it.
Richard Nixon, 41% of the popular vote. Humphrey, 40%. Wallace, 19%, with 19% of the vote in. And Joe Betty, I think you've got a call from the far west.
That's right, Walter. Conservatism, at least Barry Goldwater's brand, is going to go back to the United States Senate. Goldwater declared a winner in the CBS News estimate. At this rate, he should get 57% of the Arizona vote to Roy Elson's 43%. Elson, the former administrative aide to the outgoing Democratic Senator Carl Hayden, 91 years old. And Goldwater will be going back to the Senate. Also in Colorado, the Republicans appear to have safely held on to that seat. Peter Dominic going for his second term.
Joe, let
Yes,
me
Walter.
interrupt you for a moment. A most important call. CBS News estimates on the basis of our sample returns in from our sample precincts so far in New York State that Hubert Humphrey will carry New York State. Humphrey, 52% of the vote, Nixon, 43% of the vote, and Wallace, 5% of the vote, is what our CBS News estimate shows for New York and the nation's biggest block of electoral votes. Joe?
Well, finishing off that Senate race in Colorado, Walter, Peter Dominic is running with the same kind of lead that Barry Goldwater has in Arizona, 57% to 43% over the former governor, Steve McNichols. Dominic has piled up his lead in the suburbs and the small towns, while McNichols was getting the expected large Democratic vote from Denver. One other call, which you made earlier, Arizona is apparently going completely Republican. Richard Nixon has been declared the winner there. The CBS News estimate says he should take the state of Arizona. And in the governor's race, Jack Williams, this is a two-term seat in Arizona. Jack Williams, the Republican incumbent, looks as though he's going to go back to the State House in Arizona, defeating Sam Goddard, the former governor. So it looks like a gain of one Republican seat in the Senate. Barry Goldwater picking up Carl Hayden's seat, Walter. Peter Dominic hanging on to the Republican Senate seat from Colorado.
Let us report quickly what the electoral situation is. You know, it takes 270 votes to win in the Electoral College. And at this moment, we show Hubert Humphrey now with New York in his column and 8 states with a total of 110 electoral votes. Richard Nixon with 10 states in his column and 88 electoral votes. Wallace has won 4 states, according to our CBS News estimate, the final returns, and he has 39 electoral votes. In the states in which they are leading, we now bring Humphrey with 1 and leading electoral votes to 143, and Nixon to exactly the same total of 143. Mike Wallace, how did Humphrey put together this New York victory?
Most of it, of course, came out of New York City. He ran 2-1 in Manhattan, Bronx, the Brooklyn. In Queens and Staten Island, he ran just barely ahead. In the suburbs, Nixon ran about 55-39, and upstate 56-39. He just didn't get enough votes upstate. And in Buffalo, Humphrey carried 56-36. There are some other interesting indications of how it went, why it went. In the black ghettos of New York, Humphrey got 92 to Nixon's 6. In the Puerto Rican areas, Humphrey got 78 to Nixon's 19. As you can see, Nixon is ahead of the tabulated vote with just 1% of the vote reporting, but we have virtually all of our, there it is. Humphrey 52%, Nixon 43%, Wallace 5%, Humphrey the winner according to the CBS News estimate. In the backlash areas, surprisingly enough, Hubert Humphrey won 52% to Nixon's 41%. The only, in middle and low income, Humphrey was ahead. In high income areas, Richard Nixon was ahead 50-45. That is the first of the 3 states that are big, of course, in the East: New York, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey. Humphrey now has New York. Humphrey is leading in Pennsylvania, and in New Jersey, it's too close to call.
We were reporting earlier that on that 1950 class of senators who are up this year, there are some very prominent senators who will not be back in the Senate for the 91st session of Congress. Ohio's Frank Lauschief was defeated in the primary by Don Gilligan, who's having quite a tight race in Michigan now. Tonight, California's Thomas Kuchel was defeated in the primaries, that Republican senator out. Alabama's Senator Lister Hill, after some 30 years in the Senate, is retiring this year. George Smathers, after 18 years, is retiring from his Florida seat that has been now won by a Republican. And in Arizona, grand old man of Capitol Hill, Carl Hayden, 91 years old, after 51 years on Capitol Hill, retired this year. His seat has been won also by a Republican, Barry Goldwater. CBS News color coverage of Election Night 68 will continue in a moment.
Excedrin is made stronger against pain and its tension than any other leading headache tablet. Excedrin headache number 94102, the parking attendant.
Excuse me, fella.
What is it?
This is a red sedan.
Yes, it is. Take your red sedan and move it out on the street, or we'll push it out.
No, you don't understand. It's not my car.
What?
This isn't my car. Don't you understand that?
Let me see your ticket.
Well, here's the ticket, 94102.
94102. That checks out. That's your car.
Don't tell me it checks out.
Start pushing that red car out in the middle of the
No,
street.
you can't push the red car. It's not my car. I got a blue car. Little shoes hanging on it.
Baby shoes?
Yeah, little baby shoes. You got that in there or not?
We gave that car out.
How could you give that car out? It's my car.
You guys push this red car out, please.
Listen, would you do me a favor, fella?
What's that?
You want to give me some Excedrin?
What's the matter? You got a headache?
I got an Excedrin headache.
You're going to have to talk to the manager.
For Excedrin headaches, get Excedrin relief. Excedrin is made stronger against pain and its tension than any other leading headache tablet. Try it.
So now, with more than 1/3 of the nation's precincts reported, 35% of the popular vote in, Nixon is holding on to a bare 1% lead with 6.75 million votes to Humphrey's 6.5 million and 40% of the vote. Wallace has dropped another percentage point now to 18%, a little over 3 million votes. We told you a moment ago that our CBS News estimate now is that Hubert Humphrey will take the nation's largest single block of electoral votes, those in New York State, 43 electoral votes by a win in New York. That gives him a total of 8 states with a total of 110 electoral votes, according to our CBS News estimate. Nixon has a total of 10 states with 88 electoral votes, and Wallace 4 states with a total of 39 electoral votes. Dan Rather, let's take another look at the Middle West.
Well, Walter, Ohio and Illinois, as you know, offer some local lucky candidate 52 electoral votes, but it's not just the numbers that make these two Midwestern giants so important tonight as they maddeningly refuse to drop the other shoe, because in Illinois has not voted the wrong way, that is, hasn't failed to vote with the winner in a presidential race since 1900, and no Republican has ever become president without carrying Ohio. So with that in mind, let's take a look at the actual vote tabulations in these important states. In Illinois, with 14% of the vote counted, Humphrey leads Nixon in Illinois. Now, keep in mind, most of those votes are from the Chicago area and the upstate, the big city area of Illinois, and as Senator Dirksen pointed out a few minutes ago, only fragmentary returns from downstate. But it could mean trouble for Nixon, who was counting on Illinois' 26 electoral votes. Skipping over to Ohio, also with 26 big electoral votes at stake, 33% of the vote counted in Ohio. And again, Hubert Humphrey leading Richard Nixon. George Wallace is third. Now, with Ohio, as was the case with Illinois, a number of the CBS News estimate, that is to say sample precincts, have reported, but we simply don't have a trend in either one of those states. And that in itself could be significant. Now, in Missouri, we're beginning to get a substantial actual vote tabulation in Missouri, 40% of the vote in. Missouri with 12 electoral votes. Again, Humphrey, as was the case in Illinois and Ohio, is leading in the actual vote tabulation. 40% of the Missouri vote counted, and Humphrey out front of Nixon with Wallace running third. Wallace not running as well in Missouri as had been anticipated, and that for the moment accounts for Humphrey's lead. Now, in Missouri, the CBS News estimate is, with our sample precincts coming in substantial numbers now, we show that Nixon 47%, Humphrey 42%, and George Wallace with 11%. Now, we're not calling Missouri for Nixon at all, but it's just with the large number of our sample precincts in, it is leaning toward Nixon in Missouri. In the Wisconsin presidential race, a few returns in there, 2% of the actual vote counted, and Humphrey is leading in Wisconsin. Wisconsin expected to go Republican. Our sample precincts, we have some reports there, and it indicates that Wisconsin, despite the actual vote tabulation at the moment, may very well go to Nixon as expected. And we have a call in North Dakota, as Walter said earlier. CBS News estimates that Richard Nixon will carry North Dakota. The situation in the Midwest at the moment, Hubert Humphrey, according to the CBS News estimates, has carried Michigan. A note just handed here. We have a call in the North Dakota senatorial race. Young wins again in North Dakota. That was expected over Herschel Lashkowitz, only with 5% of the vote counted. You can see Young is leading Lashkowitz, but our CBS News estimate is that Young has been returned to the Senate from North Dakota. But we're trying to wrap up the Midwest for you. And in the Midwest, besides those states we've already mentioned, Illinois and Ohio, the two big ones, and it's simply going to be close in both of those states. Nixon is leading in South Dakota and in Iowa. Minnesota has been declared by CBS News. Our estimate is that Humphrey has carried Minnesota and Michigan. Richard Nixon has carried Indiana, Kansas, and North Dakota. Walter?
And Dan, with 19% of the national vote in, Hubert Humphrey has just pulled even in the percentages with Richard Nixon. Humphrey, 41%, a little bit less, a few votes less than Nixon's 41%. 6,930,000, whoop, it's changing before our eyes. 7,002,713 for Humphrey, 7,049,814 for Nixon, a very close race indeed. Wallace has dropped back another percentage point now to 18 percentage points. A moment ago, I reported that a third of the national popular vote was in. Well, if you're going to get led around by your nose by a machine, you got a nose as big as mine, that's the sort of trouble you can get into. The figures showed up 35% on there, and any fool, that's anybody other than I, should have been able to see right away that there were only 15 million votes counted, and that couldn't possibly be a third of the 75 million that are anticipated across this nation of ours tonight. Eric Severide, now that I have washed my dirty linen in public, what do you think is happening in this very close race tonight? Or do you think we're headed for a stalemate?
This could be maybe another Nixon-Kennedy thing in the popular vote or something approximating that, the way it's running. I think maybe there's one brief observation that might be useful, Walter. It begins to look as though if this should go into the House of Representatives by any chance, it will not be half so much because of the Wallace vote as much as we thought it would be. He's apparently going to end up here with only 4 to 5 states, 39 to 45 electoral votes. It would be even more, it seems to me, due to the fact that the two leading candidates are running so even over so much of the country. The Wallace influence is not what we thought it was. We were talking earlier about the South being even more distinct, a separate part of the body politic as a result of this vote. The Democratic Party is becoming, it seems more distinctly, the party of the industrial Northeast. Suburbia goes Republican, and that's becoming more and more a typical part of America. And here is Hubert Humphrey leading a party that must win on the basis of his great strength in the industrial big city eastern states. And he's a boy from a very small town in the Midwest with all the conditioning that went into that. Politics throws up strange fates indeed. Walter?
Dan, have you got some news from the Middle West for us?
Yes, Walter. According to CBS News estimate here, we're very close to indicating that we believe that Richard Nixon has carried Wisconsin. Although our tentative board, CBS News, yes, estimates Richard Nixon the winner in Wisconsin by approximately the percentages you see there.
Righto, Dan. We have an senatorial call, I think, from the South. Roger, want to give it to us quickly?
Sure. It's Alabama, and it's no surprise. Jim Allen, the lieutenant governor under George Wallace, has, according to our estimate, been elected the new senator from Alabama, 65%. His opponent, Perry Hooper, 25%, and the independent Robert Schwinn, about 10%. So that's Lister Hill's replacement is Jim Allen from Alabama.
So with that Wisconsin call, that gives Nixon 100 electoral votes and Humphrey 110 with that big state of New York in his column. This is Walter Cronkite at CBS News Election Headquarters.